I first heard about tiny houses 5 years ago. I watched YouTube videos and I got obsessed with the ideas that you could actually build your own house. My name is Marie and I've been living in my tiny house for almost a year now. I grew up in France, thinking that to do anything you needed some kind of qualification or experience, but you actually don't. The only thing you need is to be willing to do a lot of mistakes because you can teach yourself anything. I ended up in New Zealand 7 years ago when I told my mom in France that I needed an internship for the end of my studies. So I just wanted to get out of France and travel. We had a restaurant at the time, so she said, you know what, why don't you just put a note on the mirror in the bathroom, there's so many people going in the toilet every day, that you're looking for an internship in another country. And someone came up one day to my mom and said, I just did an internship in New Zealand. If your daughter is interested, I can just give you the detail. And that's how I did it. I came, did like a few months internship, fell in love with the country, came back to France, finished my degree, and I was like, I'm done. I'm just gonna go back to New Zealand and live there. I just had that instant feeling as soon as I arrived in New Zealand, I felt like it was my home. After thinking about a tiny house for years, I saw on Facebook that there was a workshop that was teaching how to use the tools and the basics of building a tiny house. I was really happy at that workshop. It was really cool. You didn't learn how to build a tiny house, you just learned how you're gonna struggle building a tiny house. So that was really interesting. So when I did my study, I really just wanted to save the world. That was the idea. But I wanted to just work outside and change things. I wanted to help and make a difference. Building a tiny house, it's like you build your tiny house, you help people having like another lifestyle as well, and it just like it's results straight away. Suddenly like you consume less, you waste less. I think the two happiest moments I had while I was building the tiny house was the first one when the walls were up. And then the second one when I moved in my tiny house. There was nothing, it was just the walls and I had a mattress on the ground. One of the biggest challenges during the build was probably me trying to go too fast. So you really have to take your time to do things well, and when you set up a deadline for yourself, often it doesn't happen. You don't know how long things are going to take, and you're trying to be like, okay, I'm going to do the cladding for my house, it's going to take me a month, it's going to take you way longer than that. So yeah, take your time and don't set up any deadline for yourself. The biggest mistake I made was probably with my roof. And I went to visit one of my friends and her boyfriend is a roofer, and I told him how I installed my roof, and I was so proud. And I was like, yeah, I put the little screws in there, and he told me, this is illegal in New Zealand, you can't do that. So he told me, you know what, like I'll just come next week and I'm gonna do it for you. So that was like a really massive relief, but I was so proud. And he was like, now you probably have to take everything down. So that was one of my biggest mistakes. Something I'm very proud of is probably my palette wall and my round window. So I've got that feature wall in my tiny house that I really love. I really wanted you to have some kind of like wow feeling when you come in straight away. So even if you do it wrong, it's still gonna look good because that's the point. It just needs to be rustic. So if you wanna build your own tiny home or going off grid, I think my advice would be first just start. Once you start something, you know, you just get the momentum and it's gonna be okay. But also make sure you've got the right people around you to help. So a good electrician, a good plumber, a good solar system company, and some friends, a good builder, and you'll be all good. Really early on in the design process, I needed to decide what was I going to do with energy, and I decided to go with solar because I really wanted to be independent and I wanted to be part of the solution because I studied environmental science and that was just really, really important to me. Gridfree was the company I went with because their website was full of resources to understand how solar works. And their kits are DIY, which is really empowering. You can just do it yourself. And they were really like with me along the way, answering all of my questions if I had any. I chose a tiny house kit which has 3 solar panels, 2 battery, and I also got a hybrid inverter. I chose to have a hybrid inverter because I wanted to have the freedom of plugging my house to the main if I needed to. I have a mix of gas and electrical appliances inside my tiny house. For example, I've got a fridge, I've got a washing machine, a gas oven, and a cooktop that is gas as well. I also have a laptop that I have to charge, and I installed a wireless charger inside my desk, and I also have a projector. It feels so good to be independent energy-wise. The dream is to be completely off the grid with my water as well as my waste, to really create a closed loop where I can control everything and have zero footprint. Gridfree allow me to get closer to that goal. I'm very happy with what I created here. I feel like I built a little sanctuary for myself to get away from everything.